Hi everyone, and welcome back to another session of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. We are getting very close to the end, and I'm very excited to read the next few chapters with you guys. So today we are going to be diving into chapter 15, which is called The Gathering of the Clouds. And as you guys remember from last time, Bard killed the dragon, so Smaug is no more. He is done, and now they have to kind of figure out what's going to happen with the mountain. Like I said in the last session, a lot of people think that Thorin's gone. So it's kind of up for grabs. The Elven King thinks that, and it looks like birds and other flying creatures who are very excited about all this have delivered messages as far west as the Misty Mountains. So now we're going to kind of see what the aftermath looks like of killing a dragon. It's not just as simple as like, well, the dragon's dead now we can take its place. There's going to be a lot of people vying for this. They want this territory. They want the gold. They want everything that Smaug has had for the last 100 years. So that's kind of where we're starting off today. I mentioned this the last few times, but most of these chapters are fairly short. This one is 9 pages, so this is actually a little bit longer than some of them. The last one, I think, was only about 7. So these are going to be fairly short. So hopefully they'll get you through till the end of the school year. I can't believe that we're already to the point that next week will be the end of school. That's so crazy. Just all of this that's happened. I'm really glad that I've been able to do this with you guys, but I wish so much that I was able to do this in person because this would have been so much more fun. So with all that, let's start chapter 15. Now we will return to Bilbo and the dwarves. All night one of them had watched, but when morning came they had not heard or seen any sign of danger. But ever more thickly the birds were gathering. Their companies came flying from the south, and the crows that still lived in the mountain were wheeling and crying unceasingly above. Something strange is happening, said Thorin. The time is gone for autumn wanderings, and these birds that dwell always in this land. There are starlings and flocks of finches, and far off there are many carrion birds, as if battle were afoot. Suddenly Bilbo pointed. There's that old thrush again, he cried. He seems to have escaped when Smaug smashed the side mountain, but I don't suppose the snails have. Sure enough, the old thrush was there, and as Bilbo pointed, he flew towards them and perched on a stone nearby. Then he fluttered his wings and sang. Then he cocked his head to the side, as if to listen, and then he sang again, and then he cocked his head and listened. I believe he is trying to tell us something, said Balin, but I cannot follow the speech of such birds. It is very quick and difficult. Can you make it out, Mr. Baggins? Not very well, said Bilbo. As a matter of fact, he could make out nothing of it at all, but the old fellow seems rather excited. I only wish he was a raven, said Balin. I thought you did not like them. You seemed very shy of them when we came this way before. Those were crows, and nasty, suspicious-looking creatures at that, and rude as well. You must have heard the ugly names that they were calling after us, but the ravens are different. There used to be a great friendship between them and the people of Thror, and they often brought us secret news and were rewarded with such bright things as they coveted to hide in their dwellings. They lived many a year, and their memories were long, and they had on hand wisdom, and they hand on their wisdom to children. I knew many among the ravens of the rocks when I was a dwarf lad. This very height was once named Ravenhill because there was a wise and famous pair, old Kark and his wife, that lived here above the guard chamber. But now I don't suppose that any of this ancient breed still linger. No sooner than he had finished than the old thrush gave a loud call and immediately flew away. We may not understand him, but that old bird understands us, I'm sure. Keep watch now and see what happens. Before long there was a fluttering of wings, and back came the thrush, and with him came a most decrepit old bird. He was getting blind, and he could hardly fly, and at the top of his head he was bald. He was an aged raven of great size. He alighted stiffly on the ground before them, slowly flapping his wings, and bobbed his head towards Thorin. O Thorin, son of Thrain, and Balin, son of Fundin, he croaked. And Bilbo could understand what he was saying, for he used ordinary language and not bird speech. I am Rock, son of Kark. Kark is dead, but he was well known to you once. It is 100 years, 53, since I came out of my egg. But I do not forget what my father told me. Now I am chief of the ravens of the mountain. We are few, but we still remember the king that was of old. Most of my people are abroad, for there are great tidings in the south, some tidings of joy to you, and some you will not think very good. Behold, the birds are gathering back and again to the mountain, and of Dale from the south and the east and the west, for word has gone out that Smaug is dead. Dead? Dead? Shouted the dwarves. Dead! Then we have been in needless fear for naught, and the treasure is ours. They all sprang up and began to caper about for joy. Yes, dead, said Roke. The thrush, may his feathers never fall, saw him die, and we may trust his words. He saw him fall in battle with the men of Esgaroth, in the third night back now from the rising of the moon. It was some time before Thorin could bring the dwarves to be silent and listen to the raven's news. At length, when he had gone on with the tale of the battle, he went on. So much for joy, Thorin Oakenshield. You may go back to your halls in safety. All the treasure is yours, for the moment. But many are gathering hither beside the birds. The news of his death of the guardian, or the news of the death of the guardian, has already gone far and wide, and the legend of the wealth of Thror has not lost in the telling during many years. Many are eager for a share in the peril. The share of the spoil. Already, a host of elves are on their way, and carrion birds are with them, hoping for battle and slaughter. By the lake, men murmur that their sorrows are due to the dwarves, for they are homeless and many have died, and Smaug has destroyed their town. They too think to find amends for your treasure, whether you are alive or dead. Your own wisdom must decide your course, but 13 is a small remnant of the great folks of Durin that once dwelt here, and that are now scattered far. If you will listen to my counsel, you will not trust the master of the lakemen, but rather him that shot the dragon with his bow. Bard he is, the race of Dale, from the line of Girin. He is a grim man, but true. We would see at peace once more among the dwarves and the men and the elves after the long desolation, but it may cost you dear in gold. I have spoken. Then Thorin burst forth in anger. Our thanks, Roke, Kark's son. You and your people shall not be forgotten. But none of our gold shall thieves take, or the violent carry off while we are still alive. If you would earn our thanks still more, bring us news of any that draw near. I would also beg of you, if you are still young and strong of wing, that you would send messengers to our kin in the mountains of the north, both west from here and east, and tell them of our plight. And specially go to my cousin Dane in the Iron Hills, for he has many people well armed, and dwell nearest to this place. Bid him haste. I will not say if this counsel will be good or bad, croaked Roke, but I will do what can be done, and then he flew off slowly. Back now to the mountain, cried Thorin. We have little time to lose. And little food to use, cried Bilbo, always practical on such points. In any case, he felt that the adventure was, properly speaking, over with the death of the dragon, in which he was much mistaken, and he would have given most of his share of the profits for peaceful winding up of these affairs. Back to the mountain, cried the dwarves, as if they had not heard him. So back he had to go with them. As you have heard some of the events already, you will see that the dwarves still had some days before them. They explored the caverns once more and found that, as expected, that only the front gate remained open, and that all the other gates, except of course the small secret door, had long been broken and blocked by Smaug, and no sign of them remained. Now they began to labor hard in fortifying the main entrance, and in a new path that led from it. Tools to be found in plenty that the miners and the quarriers and the builders of old had used, and as such work the dwarves were very skilled. As they worked, the ravens brought them constant tidings. In this way they learned that the Elven King had turned aside the lake, and they still had breathing space. Better still, they heard that the 3 of their ponies had escaped and were wandering wild far down the banks of the running river, not far from the rest of where their stores had been. So while the others went on with their work, Keely and Feely were sent, guided by the raven, to find the ponies and bring back what they could. They were gone 4 days, and by that time they knew that the joining of the armies of the Lakemen and the elves were hurrying towards the mountain. But now their hopes were higher, for they have had some food for some weeks, with care, chiefly cram, of course, and they were tired of it, but cram is much better than nothing. And already the gate was blocked with a wall of squared stones laid dry, but very thick and high across the opening, and there were holes in the walls where they could see or shoot, but no entrance. They climbed in or out on ladders or hauled stuff up on ropes. For the issuing of the stream, they had trapped a small low arch under a new wall, but near the entrance, so they had altered the narrow bed that a wide pool stretched from the mountain wall to the head of the fall, over which the stream went towards Dale. Approaching the gate now was only possible without swimming along a narrow ledge of cliff to the right, as one looked outwards toward the wall. The ponies they had brought only to the head of the steps of the old bridge, and unloading them there, they had bidden them return to their masters and sent them back riderless to the south. Now, I don't know about you guys, but one thing that I've noticed in this is that Thorin seems very unwilling to give his gold to anyone, which seems fair because, he came and this is his legacy and all that kind of thing, but the Lake Men, they got a large brunt of Smaug's destruction. That was their fault. That was the dwarves' fault because they led them there. The Elven King, he goes back and forth on whether or not he really deserves any of the treasures, considering that he captured them. But Thorin, he's a dwarf. They do not want to give their gold away. They're not nice. They're not a nice race. They tend to be hoarding. They're kind of like the dragon. It's almost kind of like one king's gone and another is back. And so there's kind of like, Thorin's like, no, I'm not going to give any gold, which isn't the greatest thing. So I just wanted to point that out if nobody had noticed that, because that's always something that bugged me about this book. There came a night when suddenly there were many lights and fires and torches away south to Dale before them. They have come, called Balin, and their camp is very great. They must have come into the valley under the cover of dusk along the banks at night. That night, the dwarves slept little. The morning was still pale when they watched a company approach. From behind their wall, they watched as they came to the valley's head and climbed up slowly. Before long, they could see that both men of the lake, armed as if for war, and elvish bowmen were among them. At length, the foremost of these climbed the tumbled rocks and appeared to the top of the falls. And very great was their surprise to see the pool before them and the gate blocked with a wall of new hewn stone. As they pointed, speaking to one another, Thorin hailed. "Who are you?" he called in a very loud voice. "That comes as if in war to the gates of Thorin, son of Thrain, king under the mountain. And what do you desire?" They answered nothing. Some turned swiftly back, and the others, after gazing for a while at the gate and its defenses, soon followed them. That day the camp was moved east to the river, right between the arms of the mountain. The rocks echoed with voices and song, as if they had not done so for many a day. There was the sound, too, of elven harps and of sweet music as it echoed up towards them. It seemed that the chill of the air was warmed, and they finally caught faintly the fragrance of woodland flowers blossoming in spring. Then Bilbo longed to escape the dark fortress and to go down and join the mirth and the feasting by the fires. Some of the younger dwarfs were moved in their hearts too, and they muttered they wished things had fallen out otherwise, and that they might be welcome with such folks as friends, but Thorin scowled. Then the dwarves themselves brought forth harps and instruments regained from the hoard and made music to soften the mood, but their song was not an elvish song, was much like the song they had sung low before in Bilbo's little hobbit hole. Under the mountain, dark and tall, the king has come into his hall. His foe is dead, the worm of dread, and ever so his foes shall fall. The sword is sharp, the spear is long, the arrow is swift, and the gate is strong. The heart is bold that looks on gold, and dwarves no more shall suffer wrong. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells. In places deep where dark things sleep, in hollowed halls beneath the fells. On silver necklaces they strung, the light of stars on crowns they hung. The dragon fire from twisted wire, the melody of harps they rung. The mountain throne is once more freed. O wandering folk, come summon heed. Come haste across the waste. The king a friend and kin has need. Now call we over mountains cold. Come back to caverns old. Come back unto the caverns old. Here at the gates the king awaits. His hands are rich with gem and golds. The king is come unto his hall. Under the mountain dark and tall. The worm of dread is slain and dead, and ever so our foes shall fall. This song appears to please Thorin. He smiled again and grew merry, and he began to reckon the distance to the Iron Hills and how long it would be before Dane could reach the lonely mountain, if he had set out as soon as the message had reached him. But Bilbo's heart fell, both at the song and the talk. They sounded much too warlike. The next morning, a company of spearmen was seen across the river, and they marched up the valley. They bore with them the green banner of the Elven King and the blue banner of the lake, and they advanced until they stood right before the wall of the gate. Again Thorin hailed them with a loud voice. Who are you that comes armed for war to the gates of Thorin, son of Thrain, king under the mountain? This time it was answered. A tall man stood forward, dark of hair and grim of face, and he cried, Hail Thorin, why do you fence yourself in like a robber in this hold? We are not yet foes, and we rejoice that you are alive beyond hope. We came expecting none living here, and now we are met with this matter for parley and counsel. Who are you? And what would you parley? I am Bard, and this is my hand, and it was by my hand that the dragon was slain, and your treasure delivered. Is it not a matter that concerns you? Moreover, I am by right descendant of the heir of Geraint of Dale, and in your hoard is mingled with much wealth of his halls and towns, which old Smaug stole. It is not a matter of which we may speak. Further, in his last battle, Smaug destroyed the dwellings of the men of Esgaroth, and I am yet a servant of their master. I would speak for him and ask whether you have no thought for the sorrow and the misery of his people. They aided in your distress, and in recompense you have thus far brought only ruin and doubtless undesign. Now these were fair words and true, and proudly and grimly spoken. And Bilbo thought that Thorin would at once admit what justice was in them. He did not, of course, expect that any would remember that it was he who discovered all by himself the dragon's weak spot, and that it was just as well for no one else did. But also he did not reckon with the power that the gold has upon which a dragon has long brooded, nor with the dwarvish hearts. Long hours in the past Thorin had spent in the treasury, and the lust was heavy upon him, for he had hunted chiefly for the Arkenstone, yet he had an eye for many other wondrous things lying about which were old memories and labors of the sorrows of his race. Now, they talk about this a little bit in the movie, but in here he talks about having gold fever. He's a dwarf, and he loves gold, and he loves silver. He loves all of the jewels and gems, and he can't give it up. It's like a fever whenever he sees it. So that's kind of, I would say, the biggest reason why the dwarves are seen as cold and calculating, because they have such a deep love for all of this material that they feel like they can't give it up. And if you see in the movie, they talk about it a little bit more, where Thorin becomes almost like possessed by the gold, that it takes over his mind and it almost makes him sick. You put your worst cause last and in the chief place, Thorin answered. To the treasure of my people no man has claim, but Smaug, who stole it from us, also robbed him of life or home. The treasure was not his, that his evil deeds should be amended with a share of it. The price of the goods and the assistance that we receive from Lakemen will fairly pay in due time. But nothing we will give, not even a loaf's worth, under the threat of force. While an armed host lies before our doors, we look upon you as foes and thieves. It is in my mind to ask what share of the inheritance you would have paid to our kindred had you found the hoard unguarded and us slain. A just question, Bard replied, but you are not dead, and you are not robbers. Moreover, the wealthy may have pity beyond right, and of the needy that befriended them when they were in want, and still my other claim remains unanswered. I will not parley, as I have said, with armed men at my gate, nor with all of the people of the Elven King, who I remember with small kindness. In this debate they have no place. Begone now, ere our arrows fly. And if you would speak with me again, first dismiss the elvish host to your woods, where it belongs, and then return, laying down your arms before you approach the threshold. The Elven King is my friend, and he has scoured the people of the lake in their need. And though they have no claim but friendship on him, answered Bard, we will give you time to repent your words. Gather your wisdom ere we return. Then he departed and went back to camp. Ere many hours were passed, and the banner-bearers returned, and trumpeters stood forth and blew a blast. In the name of Esgaroth, in the forest, one cried, we speak unto Thorin, Thrain's son, Oakenshield, calling himself king under the mountain, and we bid him to consider well the claims that have been urged, or be declared our foe. At the least he shall deliver 1/12 portion of the treasure unto Bard, as a dragon slayer, and the heir of Geraint. From that portion Bard will himself contribute to the aid of Esgaroth, But if Thorin would have the friendship and honor of the lands about us, as his sires had of old, then he will also give somewhat of his own for the comfort of the men of the lake. Then Thorin seized a bow of horn and shot an arrow at the speaker. It smote unto his shield and stuck there quivering. Since it is your answer, he called in return. Since such is your answer, he called in return, I declare the mountain besieged. You shall not depart from it until you call upon your side for a truce and a parley. We will bear no weapons against you, but we will leave you no gold. You may eat that if you will. With that, the messengers departed swiftly, and the dwarves were left to consider their case. So grim had Thorin become, even if they had wished, the others would not have dared to find fault with him. But indeed, most of them seemed to share his mind, except perhaps for old Fat Bomber, Fili and Kili, and Bilbo, of course, disapproving of the whole affair. He had by now more than enough of the mountain, and being besieged inside was not at all to his taste. This whole place stinks of dragon, he grumbled to himself, and it makes me sick. And cram is beginning to simply stick in my throat. All right, so that one was a little bit short, like I said, but we are now on to chapter 16. So, as I kind of mentioned here and there, the dwarves are not going to give up any of their treasure. They will repay in time what the lake people have given them, but only once services are rendered to them. They don't do trade for trade. That's not the kind of race that they are. And as you can tell in the end, Bilbo's getting a little sick of this because he's a hobbit. He loves comfort. He doesn't like conflict. There's no wars in the Shire. Everybody, people have disagreements, but this is not his area of expertise, and he does not like it at all. Slaying a spider is different than telling somebody who helped you in need that, no, you can't have anything and get out of here. So as you're going to see in the next few chapters, Bilbo's going to do some very brave things, but in a different brave way. And that's one thing I really like about this story is that Bilbo, he's brave, but he's brave in, sorry, I'm dropping my stuff. He's brave in many different ways, not just like, he battled the spiders and got everybody and faced a dragon. But he stands up for what he believes in. He stands up for the rights of other people. And that's really a brave sentiment. So next time we will see chapter 16. I'm very excited. We only have about 4 more chapters left. So I will see you then. I hope you guys have a fantastic day.